Human side Deathworld legends. The transport shuttle disintegrated in silence, its hull splitting like overripe fruit against the asteroid field. Daniel watched through his salvage vessel's viewport as escape pods scattered like seeds into the void, most drifting toward the nearest habitable world, Kepler 442b, a garden planet where survival required nothing more than patience. One pod, however, tumbled off course, spiraling toward the crimson sphere below, Tartarus 9, a Deathworld. Daniel's hands moved before his mind caught up, firing thrusters to intercept. Tartarus 9 wasn't just dangerous, it was legendary. Gravity 3 times Earth standard. Atmosphere so thick with carbon compounds that breathing required military-grade filters. Fauna that had evolved under crushing pressure, making them nearly indestructible by Commonwealth standards. The planet had claimed 47 survey teams before the Galactic Council declared it off-limits. Humans, naturally, had established a mining colony there within 6 months. The escape pod crashed through Tartarus 9's amber clouds before Daniel could reach it. He swore, a creative combination of Mandarin and Portuguese his mother would have slapped him for, and followed it down. His vessel, the Persephone, was built for Earth's Deathworld specifications. Reinforced hull, gravity compensators that could handle up to 5G engines that laughed at atmospheric density. Still, entering Tartarus 9's atmosphere felt like being swallowed by an angry god. The pod had embedded itself in a crystalline forest, the impact crater still glowing orange. Daniel landed 30 meters away, his boots sinking into soil that felt like wet concrete. The gravity immediately tried to drive him to his knees, but he'd been born on Earth, one of the rare humans who still lived on humanity's classified Deathworld. He straightened, adjusted his breather, and moved. The escape pod's hatch had buckled. Through the cracked viewport he saw her, violet skin, 4 delicate arms, compound eyes reflecting light in impossible spectrums. Zeravian royalty, judging by the bioluminescent markings along her cranial ridge. She was conscious, which was fortunate. She was also trapped, which wasn't. "Hold still," Daniel called through the pod's external speaker. His translator rendered it into galactic standard, though he suspected she understood English. Most nobility did. Her compound eyes fixed on him with an intensity that would have unnerved him if he weren't so focused on the approaching footsteps. Heavy ones, multiple sets. Tartarus 9's apex predator emerged from between the crystal trees, a 6-legged mass of armored muscle and rage that the first survey team had dubbed Titan bears before becoming their last meal. 3 of them, each massing over 2 tons. They'd smelled the blood from the crash. Daniel didn't have time for elegance. He planted shaped charges around the pod's hatch, set a 2-second delay, and threw himself over the pod. The explosion hammered his back, but the gravity compensator in his suit absorbed most of it. The hatch flew free. "Move!" He reached into the pod, his earthborn strength enough to pull her free despite Tartarus 9's crushing gravity. She weighed almost nothing to him, her species having evolved on a low-G world where elegance mattered more than endurance. The Titan bears charged. Daniel ran, carrying Princess Melissa. His translator had caught her name from her pod's emergency beacon, toward the Persephone. Behind them, the Titan bears demolished the crystal forest, their roars vibrating through the dense atmosphere like thunder. 15 meters, 10-5. He practically threw Melissa through the airlock and dove after her as the first Titan bear's claws scraped his ship's hull. The Persephone's engines screamed, and they were airborne, the bear's frustrated roars fatting below them. In the relative safety of orbit, Daniel finally allowed himself to breathe. Melissa sat against the bulkhead, all 4 hands trembling, her bioluminescent markings flickering in patterns he couldn't read. "You're insane," she said in perfect English, her voice like wind chimes. That was Tartarus 9. Nothing survives Tartarus 9. "Humans do," Daniel said, pulling off his breather. Technically, we're not supposed to tell people that Earth is also classified as a death world, but given the circumstances. Her compound eyes widened. You're from Earth, the mythical human homeworld, the one in the forbidden zones. Not mythical, just classified. He grabbed a medical kit. Are you injured? She examined herself, then looked at him with something between awe and disbelief. You descended into a death world for me, a stranger. The Council's rescue protocols are pretty clear about not leaving people to die. The Council's protocols assume reasonable risk. What you did was, she paused, searching for words. My father commands the Zoravian Imperial Fleet. My siblings are generals and diplomats. I've been trained since hatching to evaluate tactical decisions. What you did had a 94% probability of death. Daniel shrugged, so the 6% worked out. Over the following days, as Daniel navigated toward the nearest station, Melissa refused to leave his side. Not metaphorically, literally. She followed him to the cockpit, to engineering, to the tiny galley where he prepared food that fascinated and horrified her in equal measure. You consume the flesh of creatures from your death world, she asked, watching him eat a protein bar. This is synthetic, the real stuff is better. She sat beside him, all four arms wrapped around her knees, a posture that her attendants would have deemed scandalously informal for royalty. Tell me about Earth. So he did. He told her about oceans that could swallow starships, storms that made Tartarus Nine's atmosphere look calm, predators that had evolved alongside humans in an eternal arms race of hunter and hunted. He told her about humanity's classified status, how the Council had been so horrified by Earth's conditions that they'd sealed all records, fearing what species that could survive such a world might become. And yet you risk everything for strangers, Melissa said softly. Maybe that's why we survive, Daniel replied. When they finally reached Station Kepler 442, the Zoravian Imperial delegation was waiting. Admiral Corvinax, Melissa's father, stood 3 meters tall, his ceremonial armor gleaming. His compound eyes fixed on Daniel with an expression that made the Titan bears look friendly. Melissa stepped between them. Father, she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone born to rule, I invoke the right of sanctuary. This human saved my life on Tartarus 9, a feat the Council deemed impossible. By Zoravian law, I am bonded to his household until the debt is repaid. The Admiral's bioluminescent markings flashed colors Daniel's translator couldn't interpret. Melissa, you cannot. I can, I will. The debt is real. Her markings flared brighter than Daniel had ever seen. And perhaps it's time the Empire learned what the Council hides, that the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy are also the most compassionate. Daniel opened his mouth to protest, but Melissa's smallest hand found his, her grip surprisingly strong. Try to send me away, she said, looking up at him with all the stubbornness of royalty who'd never been told no, and I'll simply follow you again. It seems I have a talent for finding Deathworlders. Daniel looked from the princess to her admiral father to his battered salvage ship, and realized his quiet life of solitary mining had just become infinitely more complicated. You know, he said finally, the Persephone only has one sleeping pod. Melissa's bioluminescent markings flickered in a pattern his translator identified as amusement. Then I suppose we'll have to acquire a larger ship. An imperial princess cannot live in such conditions. I'm a salvage operator, I can't afford. Fortunately, she interrupted, her markings now definitely indicating amusement, I'm an imperial princess. I can. Admiral Corvinax made a sound somewhere between a sigh and a growl. Behind him, the imperial delegation stood in shocked silence. And Daniel, who had survived Earth, Tartarus 9, and countless other impossibilities, realized he'd finally met something he had no idea how to handle. An alien princess who decided he was worth keeping. It was, he reflected, going to be an interesting journey.